the answers, see who gets the prize. Which is, what is the prize? Do we know?
We know.
Oh, we know.
Dinner with love.
Okay, if you don't have a quiz, what do you do?
Raise your hand if you do not have a quiz form.
Okay.
Okay, we're all good.
Okay.
And you make sure that Susie gets it. And okay, there are a couple people that have to leave, and I want to have them come up so they can talk, and they have to leave. Assemblyman Green Nazarian, can you please come up? And candidate for supervisor Bobby Schreiber. And they have, introduce yourself, and I understand you have some interesting stories about Zeb.
Please stand in front of the camera and trip over.
I love how Richard doesn't put you on the spot. Never. It's completely uncharacteristic of him to do so. By the way, first and foremost, good evening, Sherman Oaks, the best named city, according to a congressman, a dear friend, as well as to me as well, because I happen to be a neighbor of yours. It's wonderful to be here. I just wanted to, even though I said I'm not going to talk much about the state, I'm going to take a minute and just say it's been a wonderful session for California, for the state of California. We're out of the recession that we were struck with and we're struggling through for a period of about 5 years. The economy might not be exactly where we want it to be, but it's much better off than where it was before. At least we're not talking about continued cuts. And yes, we are looking at truancy issues. And I wanted to, on top of that, just say, please be sure to vote in November and make sure that you vote on Propositions 1 and 2. I wish we were in a place where we wouldn't need to be fiscally put in fiscal responsibility measures on the ballot, but Proposition 2 is important to make sure that we have a stabilized rainy day fund, and Proposition 1 is necessary because we have an ongoing issue with water, and it's going to be one chapter. Now,
okay, Wally, can you please keep everyone quiet over there? Okay, do you have any interesting story that no one knows in the audience about Zeb?
You know, I'm going to make it very harmless. It's some time ago when I was running and I was a younger candidate, I approached Mr. Yaroslavsky, I'm the supervisor, and I asked, can I have your endorsement? He said, well, you know, you seem to be a nice guy. We'll take a photo together. How about that? I said, sure, of course. Well, I'll settle for that. This year, when I asked him for his endorsement, I thought he was going to make an endorsement right away. He said, well, you know what? Let me think about it. I have an elaborate committee that needs to review it, think about it, and I'll get back to you. So he didn't say anything for about 5 seconds, and he looked up and he said, it's done, I checked in with them, you're endorsed.
That's how the system works.
That's how the system works. So I was honored to have his endorsement, and since this is going to be a roast, I'm not going to say... It's not a roast? All right. I'm not gonna get into the details, but I got to say, unfortunately, the era of public service has ended that allows us to have experts and individuals who really grow to command the area that they represent the way Zev has done so. Unfortunately, we're not going to have the Waxmans and the Yaroslavskys and the Bermans of the world who, with one stroke, could accomplish many different things. But I'm hoping that the new generation, under the new guidelines that we have in place, will be able to fulfill at least a portion of those footsteps. Thank you
very much. Bobby Schreiber, in spite of you disrupting the meeting all over there, we are going to allow you to introduce yourself, and you have a story that really illustrates Zev Yaroslavsky.
Yes, I do. I went to the same thing that Member Nazarian said, and I asked Zev for his endorsement in my race, and he said he'd consult the committee.
What happened?
No, he's still consulting the committee, I think. So I want to know, from Marin, how he got that to happen in 5 seconds. How did that happen? I don't know. Anyway, I'm happy to be back here. I had such a great debate here in the primary. I see a lot of familiar faces in the heart of the San Fernando Valley. with Richard and the honorary mayor and all of you all. This is a great occasion. I see my supporter Bob Hertzberg, who's endorsed me, who's a great public servant himself. I'm happy to see Stacy Marble here from Tom LaBonger's office. Tom has endorsed me. They do a great job. She's been really terrific volunteer in my campaign. And Wally Knox, who's a great leader here. Happy to say hello to him. And I'm thrilled to be here with Zev. Zev worked really hard on homelessness on my side of the hill. He did an amazing job on that. Project 50. Very serious matter. We have the biggest population of homeless veterans in the United States is in Los Angeles. It's really hard work to fix that. Zev has worked really hard on it. It involves co-occurring disorders, mental illness, building of housing, a lot of complex issues. So I want to try, if you all vote for me, to work on those issues here in the Valley where you have tremendous youth unemployment and challenges. Richard's not unemployed. Anyway, happy to see you all. Hope I get to have a little chat with those of you in the corner.
Thank you. Okay, Marshall Long. Give us an update, and also Matt Epstein wants more questions. The green form are questions for Zev, and the white forms are the quiz with a huge prize.
I got mine now. I'd like to welcome Zev. My wife has bought the Learning Company history lectures, which I play on my 5-minute commute. And one of the interesting things I picked up that was after Charlemagne, after 800 AD, the foundations of France kind of started, and they divided the land parcels up into smaller and smaller portions. And they assigned some of these portions to some nobility, who they called counts. And each count was given a portion of land which was known as a county. And so I think we are fortunate to have Count Zev here tonight, and I think we really should start calling him Count Zev. On the lighter side, there are a few projects that are ongoing. One is in the neighborhood of Buckley School. There have been traffic jams there in the mornings where people are cutting around and driving on the wrong side of the street and causing a mess. The city is proposing to disallow parking on the west side of Stansbury between Roblar Road and Valley Vista in the mornings between 6 a.m. and 8:30 a.m. This is an experiment, I'm told, but it would mean that the people on the west side couldn't park on the street in front of their houses. So Eric King is the field deputy for Tom LaBonge, in charge of that, and you can track him down on Tom's website and make your views known. On the Fashion Square project, an expansion is being worked on. Part of the expansion is a building on the freeway side of the parking lot where some entertainment venues are proposed. It turns out they found out that that land was owned by Macy's, and so they're in the process of negotiating, and that will slow things down. On the Sunkez project, Kimberly Durston is our chair, and she had to have eye surgery a week or two ago, and so she is recovering, and she expects to be back in a couple of weeks. The neighborhood council has formed a committee on the project, and their initial action was to pass a motion opposing the project in its current form. Our committee we'll work with them and try to come up with a more acceptable plan.
Thank you. Candidates, please come up here. Also, deputies, please come up here. What? You're not a candidate, Jules. Candidates, if they could introduce themselves first, 30 seconds, who you are.
I'm not a candidate. There are a bunch of combs on that table over there, and that means Congressman Sherman's been here. Congressman Sherman was very grateful for his visit 2 months ago. He enjoyed his discussion on foreign policy with everybody, and so thanks for coming out. There's a number on the combs. If anyone knows of anyone having any trouble with federal agencies, please have them make use of that number. Reach out to our office. Our office tries to resolve
And what's your name?
on a daily basis. My name's John Alford, but Congressman Sherman is here every day and every night in the Valley trying to keep folks in touch with their federal government. So thanks, everyone.
You've done,
Yeah, I'm 30, I'm done.
exactly.
Thanks, everyone.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Eric King. I am a field deputy for Councilman Tom LaBonge here in Sherman Oaks. Got a couple things I want to talk about real quick. The temporary parking restrictions on Stansbury have already been lifted. They are. We're going to explore other alternatives along with LADOT to improve traffic in the area, as well as not take away any parking spaces. So no need to worry about that one. Number two, when I announced there's this flyer over on the table over here. Councilmember Tom LaBonge is doing a press conference tomorrow morning at the Gelson's parking lot on Van Nuys to announce the Van Nuys Boulevard resurfacing, which is going to occur this Saturday and Sunday. All 4 ramps at Van Nuys Boulevard to the 101 will be closed most of the day, Saturday and Sunday. In a rare miracle, you might say, the state is actually working with the city of Los Angeles to get all of that done in 1 weekend. So it's going to be great.
Thank you.
And last thing real quick. We're also working on traffic up in the hills, Beverly Glen, Mulholland. I know it's terrible right now, but we're attacking little pieces at a time to mitigate that. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Deputies, Jonathan.
Jonathan Brown with Councilman LaBonge's office. Good to see everybody. Jonathan Brown with Councilman Tom LaBonge's office. Good to see everybody again. I've received several phone calls about the intersection of Woodman and Ventura. And right now you only have 2 lanes coming out from south of the boulevard to get there, and it bottlenecks when someone's trying to cross the street. So we got approval from the Plan Review Board, the Ventura Plan Review Board, and I have design approval from BOE to add a 3rd lane there. So we have a right, a through, and a left, which will certainly help ease congestion over there where Woodman and Benedict Canyon come together. So I'm in the works. We have the approval, just now let's get it done. That's the hard part. Now, thank you. And secondly, there's another program that Eric and I are doing. We have many restaurants on Ventura, and the number 1 issue is parking. So we are going to all the office buildings, the veterinarian clinics, medical office, anything that closes by 5 or 6 o'clock. And we are soliciting them to see if they're willing to possibly lease out their parking at night to restaurants. And if they are, we're going to create a database. We're going to take that database to the chamber, to business, to restaurants, and say, this is what's available. You guys work something out. So the goal is to get cars out of the neighborhood, help dining on the boulevard, and help the businesses.
Thank you. Any other deputies? Okay, the candidates, 30 seconds. Please introduce yourself. It's not here.
Hi folks, I'm Wally Knox. Many of you remember I represented you for many years in the state legislature, and now I'm running to succeed Tom LaBonge. I'll never replace Tom LaBonge, and represent you once again in Sherman Oaks. Thanks very much.
Okay.
Good evening, I'm Carolyn Ramsey. I've been here many times before. I was Councilmember LaBonge's chief of staff and his endorsed candidate in this race. But I want to talk to you tonight about water issues, which that's really the number 1 issue that we face right now.
In 30
because of the
seconds?
drought. Yes, in 30 seconds. Because the DWP is now offering a $3 per square foot rebate for anybody who swaps out their yard for drought-tolerant plants. And my campaign is doing a tour of drought-tolerant gardens so that people can see what a drought-tolerant garden looks like, so it's not so scary to take out your grass. So I'm going to have these over here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, over here. And we have a debate in January among the candidates, so mark it down. Over here.
Between who? Who's going to be at the debate?
Everyone's going to be at the debate.
Okay, that's my cue. Again, my name is Oscar Winslow. I need you to remember me. So, once again, 30 years with the City of Los Angeles, and in that time, as a retired police officer, currently a deputy city attorney, and I've been a small business owner. But for you to remember me, oh, by the way, I saw a lot of you at the Sherman Oaks Street Fair. Great to see you again. I know a lot of you remember me through the cards. There are some cards on the table. I'm running fast. Lastly, remember me. The guy in the lavender shirt. The coordinator tonight.
Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, I'm Joan Pelago and I too am running for City Council District 4. Many of you have been calling me and telling me that I'm not on your absentee ballot. Thank you for checking, but our election isn't until March 3rd, 2015. So keep looking for our names. I'm a resident of Sherman Oaks for 26 years. I know how the city works, how it doesn't work, and I know how we can get the work done together. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Jay Beaver. I am a resident of Sherman Oaks and also a candidate for CD4. I'm the guy that got rid of the red light cameras here in Los Angeles. And the reason that's important, thank you, I thought it was a good idea too. And the reason that that's important for this election is that I did that as just a regular citizen, not as a politician, not as somebody's staff member, just somebody who wanted to get something done. I got rid of a failed program that's been going on for over a decade, and I worked within the system to convince the city council and the police commission to change their minds on something that they had supported for a long time. So if that's the kind of person you'd like, I'd love to be your candidate. Thank you so much.
Good evening, my name is David Hernandez, and it's good to be here amongst many of my friends. I'm running for City Council District 2, which is the community of Studio City, Valley Village, Valley Glen, North Hollywood, a little bit of Sun Valley, a little bit of North Hollywood. And the reason I'm here is because there are a lot of issues within City Council District 2 that I know are important to you. Harvard Westlake being a major concern, the Weddington Golf Course, all of the different land use projects that are taking place in and around your district. I believe that it's important that as being one vote on LA City Council that I make sure that I receive all of the input, all of your concerns, and all of your advice and suggestions when I make a decision on the City Council. So it's David Hernandez, and I look forward to being here next month to talk to you about the trash monopoly.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to ask Dave Bryan and Zeb Yaroslavsky to come on up. But before we do that, I want to have Tamar come up with her hat as a school board member. I know normally she's talking to the city attorney's office, but here tonight she is here as a member of the Los Angeles Unified School District Board of Trustees. So she's going to tell us a little about what's next with the superintendent, with the chair. And I think she has an interesting story about Zeb.
So, and I don't even think Supervisor Yaroslavsky knows this, but when I decided I wanted to, try out being an intern in a political office, I asked everyone I knew, who should I work for, and Zeb Yaroslavsky was the answer. So I was so excited. I was in college and I applied to his office to be an intern, and I got turned down. But his office did something that I've never seen done before or really since, in that they actually helped me find someone else to intern for. and they helped me find Terry Friedman's office, state assembly member. A lot of you remember Terry. And I interned for Terry, then went to work for Terry, and the rest is history. So this is your fault. So Richard asked me to come talk tonight with my school board hat on. I can't imagine why. It's not like we've been in the paper or anything recently. So we do have a new superintendent. Ray Cortines has returned to LAUSD for the third time to be the superintendent. We have asked him really to tackle three main issues. The first is LISIS, which is our student information system that is not working. I've asked the Inspector General to do a report on why it's not working and whose fault it is. That should come out in about 4 weeks. But in the meantime, the superintendent is also working on just trying to figure out what happened and how we're going to fix it, because literally we are bailing water out of the boat while we're sailing it. So that's a huge issue that he's focused on. Our teachers are working without a contract, and the teachers union has threatened to strike. So we have asked him to go in and work on labor negotiations with them. And then budget is always a huge issue at LAUSD, because while there is more money in LAUSD out of the local control funding formula and Prop 30 that many of you voted on, our outlying years do not look good, and we are probably going to do cuts once again because we have programs and staff that we are not being funded for, and we're as much as we're getting new money from some places, we're losing a tremendous amount of money in others, and I don't think anyone realizes that. So he has his work cut out for him. We are going to do a very transparent nationwide search for a new superintendent, but in the meantime, I think that the district is in really good hands with Superintendent Cortines, and maybe we'll even drag him out here for a future meeting.
Drag. Bring him out. Excellent idea. Okay, let's go on to why we're here. 31 years, Yaroslavsky has represented Sherman Oaks. And so we want to get some background, get some information. And I've asked Dave Bryan, who hopefully most of you know as the political reporter for Channel 2 and Channel 9, to see if we can find out more about Yaroslavsky, the person. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Dave Bryan.
Thanks, Richard. Zev, you know, we've already heard from one person who applied for a job, and I think that may become a theme throughout the night, people who applied for jobs and are now here to get revenge. I want to ask you, and by the way, folks, we're going to have some fun. We're going to talk about some humorous things that happened during the 39 years that you were in the city council with board of supervisors, but we're also going to talk about serious issues, so we're going to try to cover a lot of ground here. And we're taking questions from the audience, right, Richard?
Yes.
Yeah, so we'll be asking some of your questions as well. So Zed, I think the most obvious question, and never let it be said I missed the obvious, is what's going through your mind now? Are you fearful of retirement? Are you looking forward to it? Do you have a lot of ideas about what you want to do? What do you think?
What I'm thinking is,
I think get me the hell out of here.
how am I going to pack all this crap in the next 5 weeks? Really, that's the most anxiety I've had in a long time. It's a big job. No, I don't fear it. I welcome it. I'm looking forward to it. I have 2 beautiful granddaughters who have me wrapped around their fingers, and a grandson on the way. So I'm not going to be without something to do. And I believe what I said a couple of years ago, that I think 4 decades is long enough for somebody to be an elected official, and I do believe that. That's all I've done in my adult life once I left college, more or less. I look forward to doing some other things. I don't know exactly what they'll be. There may not be one thing in particular, but several things. I'm going to write a memoir. The sooner the better, while I still can remember things. And I do believe that people who've been involved in any walk of life where they've had an impact on their walk of life, that they owe it to themselves, and if nobody else, their children, to write their story. And I'm trained to do 2 things in life. One is to type, and the other, I was trained to be a historian when I was at UCLA. And I believe that writing histories the first-person histories are very important. So I'm going to do that. And then we'll see. I'm not rushing to do anything in particular. A friend of mine called me, in fact, he's not just any old friend, he's the former administrator of NASA, Dan Golden, who I've known for 45 years. He called me when he heard I wasn't going to run for office again, and he said, I'm going to give you one piece of advice. He said, do nothing for 6 months after you retire. Decompress, do whatever you feel like doing, so things will happen that you never even dreamed of, things will fall into your lap. Well, I'm not going to take 6 months, because I'm not the former administrator of NASA, and what he did, but I'm going to take a little time to just do whatever I damn well please, and I'm going to stay involved. People have asked me when I'm going to stay involved. I will stay involved in public policy issues. I'm not going to do it as an elected official. I care a lot about some of the issues that face the city and the county. I still live here. I'm not moving. I'm not going fishing, so you can expect to see me around. But I'll get to pick the time and place where you'll see me. I won't be, Richard Close won't be determining when I get up in the morning, but I will be around. I look forward to it.
You know, you probably heard that there is an opening coming up here in Los Angeles at the LAUSD. Superintendent. I'm just saying.
Yeah, well, you can keep saying. I'm not a glutton for more punishment than I've already had. That's a tough job, and I hope they find a good person. It's a very tough job.
You know, you mentioned history, and your love of history. And we're going to, throughout the course of the evening, talk to people that know Zev well and have a lot of contact with him. I
believe in accurate history. I just want
accurate history.
We don't want any of these fly-by-night historians to make things up at the Sherman Oaks Homeowners Club.
You know, that's the whole fun of being here tonight. So I want to ask Elisa Katz to come up because she's been your chief deputy for 37 years or so, but who's counting? And she's going to talk to us about history and your love of history and your staff meetings.
So that's why she left the office early tonight.
Well, hi. Thank you for those 2 intros. I got 2 history intros. That's good. So, as we all know, as we said, Zev really loves history. In fact, as you may know, he has a master's degree in the history of the British Empire. Can everybody hear me? Can you guys hear me in the back? Can you hear me? Okay. So, this is reflected in one of his favorite quotes, which you will remember if you have ever been to a groundbreaking or a dedication where Zev is one of the many dignitaries. Because when it's his turn to speak, he likes to quote Winston Churchill, like this. What's that?
Everything that needs to be said has been said, but not everyone has said it.
Thank you. Okay.
Sound like a news director.
I'm 1 for 1.
Okay. But the really great thing about Zev and his love for history is that he also loves to share it with his friends and colleagues because he thinks we should love it too. Of course, Zev likes to share everything that he loves. As everyone who has ever been to a meeting with Zev knows, the meeting begins with the latest sports news, starting with the Bruins, progressing to the Dodgers, the Lakers, the Fairfax High School Lions, and occasionally even the USC Trojans. Zev loves sports stories so much that we all know his ideal post-retirement job is to join Vin Scully in the broadcast booth doing color for the Dodger games. So we're holding a hope for that. Or perhaps another ideal job would be to join up with Josh Rubenstein at KKL9, since another thing Zev loves and loves to share is the weather report. As you may know, Zev is not really technologically savvy, but he was an early adopter of the Weather Channel. He's very much up on his barometric pressure and his isobars, but don't ask me. But what Zev truly likes to share is his love of history, and who better to share it with than his adoring and high-achieving staff. And what better time to share it than during our weekly agenda meeting, every Monday morning at 9 a.m., kind of, when the business of the day is to go over, maybe 60 or 70 items on the agenda, covering every aspect of the county's business. But we'll get to the agenda shortly. First, Zev needs to share his latest insights about the Vietnam War, or the Nixon tapes, or the 4-volume series by Robert Caro about Lyndon Johnson, all of which he read. And, you know, some of us are interested in history. Others, not so much. Some of us lived through this era and share Zev's intense preoccupation with the 1960s and 70s. But some of us were not even born. You know, it is very hard to have a serious discussion about transportation policy with someone who doesn't even know the meaning of an e-ticket ride. But none of this matters. Zev wants to talk in very rich detail about how Lyndon Johnson manipulated President Kennedy's people after the assassination. So Zev reads us from the transcript, playing each part, doing President Johnson's drawl, doing the nervous responses from the Kennedy people, the joking with Johnson and his aides. Then a little bit later, the audiobook comes out, and we do the whole thing again. This time we listen to the tapes, and Zev offers play-by-play and color commentary. So this sort of thing goes on. We're weaving between Board of Supervisors' agenda items and history lessons. It is highly entertaining, but some of us do have things to do. Some staff members have meetings, or they claim that they have meetings, and they have to excuse themselves. Other staff members begin to schedule meetings. Whoever can't pull that off is glancing at the clock, checking their iPhones, and trying to appear fascinated. Meanwhile, I'm trying to signal Zev with my body language that it's time to move on. So I'm doing like, I'm kind of doing the eye thing, and anyway, it's not working. But anyway, after a few sessions of this, we do actually move on. So, anyway, recently we got a whole new category of Zev stories. This time they're about his beloved granddaughters, Sadie and Mary. So when Zev told us all how much Sadie loves his stories about Artie the aardvark, and let us know that he was looking for a stuffed aardvark to give her, we all dove for our iPhones and came up with one. So Zev, I just want to say thank you for entertaining us with your skill as a storyteller, your always penetrating analysis of the decades that formed both of us, your wisdom, and your true enthusiasm for sharing everything that you love.
Business about the weatherman is actually, there's an element of truth to this. I actually wanted to be a meteorologist when I was in high school. And when I entered UCLA, I actually, as I was preparing to enter UCLA, my senior year in high school, I thought of applying to get into the meteorology department. Until I found out that meteorology was all about physics. Physics was not one of my strong subjects. And that ended that, and the rest was, as they say, history.
So Zev, this all started, as I understand it, when you were at UCLA, and you became very interested and involved in the treatment of Jews in the Soviet Union. Did that movement and your activism over the years sort of frame the rest of your career? Is that what triggered you to move in the direction that you did?
Yes, and you remember that when I entered UCLA in 1967, it was the heart of the social action movement, the civil rights movement that had taken place and was still taking place, and the Vietnam War was raging, and uprisings were raging on every campus in America. And social action was part of how I was raised by my parents. My parents came from the old country in the 1920s. They moved to LA in the late 1930s. My dad formed a union, Hebrew Teachers Union, believe it or not, here in LA. Both my mother and father taught Hebrew. We were not people of means. My dad didn't own his first house until he was 54, and it was not an expensive house. So I grew up in Boyle Heights, moved to the west side, to the Fairfax neighborhood, and at the dinner table in our house was a debating table. And my mother died when I was young, when I was 10 years old. So it was me and my dad, because my sister was older and had left and gone on to college. And I'd engage in great debates with my dad over everything. We didn't agree on anything. Those of you who are old enough to remember the 1968 primary election for president, Eugene McCarthy, Bobby Kennedy, and then the then Attorney General Tom Lynch, who was the stalking horse for Lyndon Johnson. who ended up getting 12% of the vote in California in that primary. My dad voted for Tom Lynch. You can imagine what was going on in my household. So social action was part of my blood. I also, just to integrate this with the Soviet Jewry issue, I had a grandmother who lived in the Soviet Union. I had two aunts and a first cousin who lived in the Soviet Union. And all during my upbringing, I kept asking, why does every other kid have a grandmother who lives down the street? But my grandmother is in Leningrad, and I can't even write her a letter without her being threatened with going to a prison camp. And as I got older, I decided to manifest my social action tendencies for that cause. And I got involved in it in '68, just as I was getting into college. Did it really for all the years until I got elected to the city council. In fact, I did it professionally. I ran the Council for Soviet Jews. One of the things that we did in that effort was to organize on behalf of the Jackson Amendment, which was Henry Jackson's amendment to tie most favored nation status for the Soviets to freedom of emigration for Jews. And I got a taste of lobbying and working Capitol Hill, and I got very interested in that. And my ambition was really not to run for office, it was to be a staffer on Capitol Hill. I would have been delighted with that. As I've since learned, I probably would have been delighted for about a year, and I would have gotten tired of it. But I really loved it. I really loved the politics of the lowercase p and getting involved. And then when Ed Edelman was elected from the city council, was elected to the board of supervisors, it created a vacancy for the city council seat. And my wife and I talked about it. We've been married for 4 years, and I said, if I'm ever going to run, now's the time to run. I'm out of graduate school. I haven't decided what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. We have no kids. I can blow 6 months of my life and see what happens. And nobody expected me to win. I didn't expect to win. And one thing led to another, and lightning struck. It was a unique opportunity, a unique time, and it all worked out the way it has worked out. I'm very happy with the way it worked out.
Well, we've researched these things very carefully. We have our sources. So we have some information about some of the things you did in connection with and during your trip to the Soviet Union, when I think you went to visit family members, as you mentioned.
Yes.
And Richard Close has some background information for us.
Well, I mean, what I've heard from numerous sources relates to video that's in this DVD called Refuseniks. And in there, you will see pictures of Zev, in the 1970s, okay? And some of which was shown earlier on the screen here, the ones when he was much younger. So a couple stories that I know about is, first, when you came back here, right? You were at UCLA and you decided that you wanted to organize a march on City Hall, a candlelight march protesting against the city's was having a dignitary from Russia visit the city council, and that wasn't right. That we should not be celebrating the Soviet Union at this point in time. So, as I understand it, what you did, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you called up George Putnam. People remember George Putnam, the newscaster? You called up his studio and put on a fake voice and said, "This is Joel Smith. I'm a professor from UCLA. And I have here a student who just returned from Russia. And he has some very interesting things for George Putnam. Could you please get George Putnam on so this student can tell him?" And the person says, "Let me see." Putnam comes on the phone, and Zev, who is playing the professor, changes his voice and says, "I just came back from the Soviet Union, and what did you tell George Putnam, and how'd you get him involved in the," and you'll see a video of the March on City Hall from Walter Cronkite's news program the next day. How'd you convince George Putnam?
Well, I don't know what I said to him, but the story is true. I was one of the great telephone pranksters of all time. I want to say I stopped doing that when I was elected to the city council. But on December 1st at 12:01, if you get a weird call, it may be me. George and I struck up an interesting relationship because I was a left-wing, anti-war activist, and he was, most of you remember, George Putnam was an arch conservative, at least that's the way he looked to us. As I got to know him, he was actually, he was from Minnesota. He was a member of the Democratic Farm Labor Party of Minnesota. With the exception of the Vietnam War, he was actually somewhat progressive on social issues. But on the Vietnam War, he was what he was. But he got it. We needed, me and my friend Cy Frunkin, who some of you may remember, who lived in Studio City, passed away a few years back. We wanted to get somebody who would take on our cause in the media and generate some support for us. George was willing to do that, and he had this segment in his news program called One Reporter's Opinion, and anybody from the public could come on to his show for 3 minutes and spout off. Well, he made sure that we got on, once a month, twice a month, and one day, and he loved me because I was this long-haired left-winger that he could talk to, because we had one thing in common: we hated the Soviet Union. And what better bonding thing could two people have? And he would take me inside a dinner at the old Nicodel restaurant. And one day, after he'd take an interview, one day he said, and I'll do my George Putnam voice, it's a very good one. He said, "Cy, Zev, we should do a march in downtown Los Angeles and bring 10,000 people out there for Soviet Jews." And I said, "George, that's really nice of you, but we don't have the resources and we don't have the reach." He says, "I'll advertise it every night for 2 weeks before the march." And so we did it on the first night of Hanukkah and the Festival of Freedom. All right?
Okay.
Uh-oh.
You
all right? Okay.
Don't sit in it again.
So he went on every night for 2 weeks advertising the candlelight walk for Soviet Jews. We had no idea how many people were going to come. And it was a candlelight walk. It was after dark. Everybody, and George's tagline was, "And don't forget to bring your candle." And so the first year we did it, 5,000 people showed up with candles. And one thing you should know if you ever try to pull off a candlelight walk, the candle, the wax that melts onto the sidewalk or the street and you're marching on it. It's fine at night when it's 42 degrees in December, but the next morning it melts. We had a mess on our hands the next morning. People were slipping and sliding all over the mall between the Music Center and City Hall. The next year he did it, we had 10,000 people. It became one of the biggest demonstrations for Soviet Jews anywhere in the world at the time. It was 1969. The issue was just getting hot. And so, just to close the loop on George Putnam, I consider the fact that George Putnam gave us all this exposure, and particularly me, because I ran for office. I don't think I would have ever gotten elected to office if it hadn't been for George Putnam. But that wasn't the motivation in 1968 and 69, not even close. But the fact of the matter is that to the extent that I was known in the 5th Council District, it was at first largely because of George Putnam having me and Cy Frunkin on his show. And more important than what he did for me, what he did for the cause that we were all fighting for was incredibly important. And despite the fact that we had fundamental political differences on the war, on this issue, he was a saint. And I will never forget what he did. And we had arguments once I got elected. He went on the radio and he blasted me for things that he didn't agree that I was doing. But in his later years, when he started to get ill and he went off the radio, we had some good conversations. He was a wonderful ally to have.
One other story about this DVD that actually you told me. You went to the Soviet Union to interview some of the refuseniks, and you brought with you a 8mm camera, 16mm camera, and a separate tape recorder.
Right.
Okay. And as I understand it, what happened, because you went there at a time where you could get arrested if the government found out that you were talking with these people. When you were leaving the country, as I understand it, you're at the airport, they pull the customs police, whatever, pull you out of line.
Yeah, so let me tell the story before you blow it. I mean, it's a very interesting story. I had a cousin who, anybody here who's in the motion picture industry? So you remember Consolidated Film Industries? My cousin was president of CFI. I go to Sid Solo. I call Sid, yeah, I remember Sid. Great guy. I said, Sid, I'm going to Russia. I need a camera. I need some film. So he gives me an old Bell & Howell 16mm film, World War II vintage. And he gives me a bunch of film. And I say, Sid, I think I'm going to need some dummy film because I suspect that they're going to know I'm running around Moscow and Leningrad with a camera, and they're going to ask me for the film when I leave the country. So I want to have some dummy film that I can fake a protest, don't take my film, and let them take the film and expose it. Well, I'll find another way to get the real film out. So he gave me some exposed film. When I go to the Soviet Union, 7 days, we were on an American Express trip, so there was a group of 30 people. We never were with the 30 people. But I did befriend a couple from Cleveland, Ohio. And at the Leningrad airport, which is where we were leaving from, I asked the wife of this couple, I said, do you think you would be willing to take 6 rolls of film in your suitcase? And we'll reconnect when we get to the States. She talked to her husband, and her husband, it's a very risky thing for them to do, said, yes, we'll do it. So I go to the men's room with her husband. I give him 6 rolls of film in these cans. And in my suitcase are the 6 rolls of dummy film. And when I get to customs, sure enough, the son of a bitch says, open your suitcase. And I said, what? And he says, where's the film? And I said, why do you want my film? He says, we want to see your film. So I open the suitcase, there's the film. Inside, my friend who was with me, my colleague, spoke fluent Russian, and he starts to argue with this guy. There's nothing in this film of any consequence. There's film about, we were there on a May Day, so there's this big parade in front of our hotel at 7 in the morning. All these Russians celebrating a holiday. They were forced to get up at 6 a.m. so that they can go walk with phony plastic flowers on the main drag of Moscow. And we filmed it. And he said, that's all we have. And we make this big stink. And he says, there was no demonstration on May Day. No parade on May Day. And he said, what do you mean there's no parade? 30,000 people walked by our hotel. He says, that wasn't a parade, that was a demonstration. I said, oh, well, anyway, make a long story short, they take the film, they go in another room, they expose it, they expose it, feeling very good about themselves. We shed these phony tears about how they ruined our film, and everybody was happy. And when we got to New York, I got in touch with the people in Cleveland, Ohio, and we had some very valuable film footage on there, including video or film of Valerie and Galina Panov, who were 2 of the greatest ballet dancers of their time at the Kirov Ballet, who were fired from their job because they had applied to leave the country. We had them in their apartment, their one-room apartment, doing ballet exercises on this one bar that they had. It's stunning film. I got it shipped from Cleveland to New York. I stayed in New York. We tried to get it to NBC. NBC didn't care for it. We got it to CBS, and 3-4 months later, the Panovs were finally released, and Walter Cronkite News used the footage on the nightly news.
And some of this footage
is on, all of that is on here. And some film, we had film of people of the KGB staking out an apartment where we were meeting with every refusenik in town. They all came to this one apartment, including Anatoly Sharansky. And one of them told me that he was leaving. He says, and watch from the balcony, he says, when I leave and I get on the bus, you will see a KGB car following the bus. So I went out on the balcony and waited for him to get on the bus. And sure enough, the minute he got on the bus and the bus took off, 2 plainclothes cars come following him, almost run over 2 pedestrians just to follow this guy. It was really kind of hairy, but it was fun.
Well, Chuck, we want to make sure you're really telling us true stories, not making up stories. So do we have a guest here that can validate your stories? Not right now, but a little later. Bring in the guest. The person, Barbara Yaroslavsky, Zeb's wife of how many years?
42.
42 years. Barbara, come have a seat. We're going to hear from you a little bit later, but we need someone who's going to make sure that Zeb tells only the truth. So have a seat with Bob Hertzberg, and he'll make sure everything is A-okay. Okay,
We're going to change gears now. All right, never mind, we're not going to change gears, forget that. So, in 1975, you were elected to the city council, as you mentioned, a huge upset, beat the establishment candidate. And Mayor Tom Bradley said to you, congratulations, now you're part of the establishment. And you said?
But the establishment is not part of me.
So, you had...
That's one of the questions on the quiz?
That was the tiebreaker.
Oh, no.
Hopefully there'll be no time.
I'll come up with a new one.
That'll just make the contest more interesting. So, my question is this. That exchange kind of illustrates, I think, in some ways, the interesting, one might say, contentious relationship you had at times with Mayor Bradley. Tell me about the relationship.
Well, we had two contentious periods. One was in my first campaign because his whole organization was endorsing my opponent. And so I came into office not as one of his allies. The second contentious part was when I seriously, and really the only time I seriously undertook an effort to run for mayor, which was in 1989, but I didn't run, as everybody knows. And for 2 years, we were political adversaries. But other than those two events, my relationship with Tom Bradley was really quite good. And now that I have the benefit of 40 years of perspective, I will tell you that not only was Tom Bradley the best mayor I've ever seen in my adult life in Los Angeles, and not even a close call. He was a man of great principle and great integrity, despite a couple of lapses towards the end of his career, which were